When I came home for spring break, the light aroma of freshly baked goods greeted me, a comforting and familiar part of our kitchen. Mum was baking a pie, humming along to the radio, while my younger brother Jacob sat glued to the TV, surrounded by an assortment of brightly colored juice boxes. At 8 years old, he was a bundle of energy, but the moment you turned on the TV, he became immovable. "Emmy, you're home!" he shouted excitedly, practically leaping into my arms before I could even set down my bag. "Missed my programs, huh?" he asked with a smug grin, pointing to the screen where a cheerful cartoon pig was chattering animatedly. I smirked. "Of course, kiddo. Nothing beats Peppa Pig. Top-tier entertainment." Jacob giggled, delighted, and I sat beside him for a moment. Jacob was a good kid, but his obsessive love for children's shows sometimes felt a little odd. He didn't just watch them, he absorbed them, memorizing every character, every tune, as if it were more than just TV. Later that day, I decided to take a walk through town. Ours was one of those old American towns where time seemed to stand still. Small shops with faded signs, a bakery with a display full of cupcakes, and an antique store I'd always avoided for some reason. But this time, I stopped. Something about the way sunlight filtered through the dusty window caught my attention. For a moment, it felt like everything else around me had gone silent. I stepped inside. The smell of old paper and varnished wood hit me instantly. Shelves stuffed with books, records, and strange figurines stretched along the walls. In one corner, I noticed boxes filled with VHS tapes and DVDs. I hadn't planned to dig through them, but curiosity won. I started sifting through the covers. Old cartoons, forgotten movies, TV recordings from stations that had long since disappeared. And then I found it. A disc without a proper case, just a plain plastic sleeve. On the cover was a crudely drawn figure, an unsettling doll with an angular face, enormous eyes, and a crooked, almost sinister smile. At the bottom, scrawled in bold letters, was the title, The House of Angular Freddy. Something about the name stirred a memory. I vaguely recalled being a child, sitting in front of our old TV. This show had always seemed to play in the background like the static hum of my childhood. Yet, strangely, I couldn't remember a single episode, just that angular character, his eyes staring a little too directly. For $1, I decided to take it. That evening, I pulled out the disc. Jacob immediately perked up, clutching a pillow and settling in on the couch, ready for whatever I'd brought home. The main menu was strange. It showed a house that looked eerily familiar, with peeling paint and a single attic window where a shadow seemed to linger. I selected the first episode. The opening sequence started with a warped, distorted melody. The camera crawled down a deserted street before stopping in front of a rundown house. Then Freddy appeared. His movements were jerky, like a broken animatronic. "Hello, friends," he said, in a voice more like a hiss than a greeting. Jacob laughed gleefully, but a chill ran down my spine. At first, the episode seemed normal enough. Freddy announced that his friends were coming over and they were going to have fun. There was a knock at the door. When Freddy opened it, I nearly gasped. 2 tall, formless figures, clearly puppets, stood at the door. Their faces were smooth, like mannequins, except their eyes were just black voids. They didn't speak, only swayed side to side like pendulums. Jacob clapped his hands in delight, but I felt a knot of dread tightening in my chest. Freddy suggested they play a game called Corners. One of the figures produced a knife, and the camera zoomed in so close to the blade that it filled the entire screen. And then I heard it, a faint rustling sound. Behind me. I froze, then slowly turned, but no one was there. On the screen, the door in Freddy's house creaked open. At that exact moment, the door to our kitchen shifted, moving slightly ajar. I saw it from the corner of my eye. The creak was so soft it felt like someone was trying not to be noticed. Emmy, what are you doing? Jacob asked, confused. He was still watching the show, oblivious to everything else. I turned back to the kitchen door. It was closed again, as if it had never moved. You didn't hear that? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Hear what? He replied, eyes glued to the screen. Shh, this is funny. Through Jacob's giggles, I heard the sound again. But now it wasn't rustling, it was soft, deliberate footsteps, like someone walking barefoot on a wooden floor. I tried to focus. The steps stopped. On the screen, Freddy and his friends were still playing. The puppets seemed to speak, though their mouths didn't move. Freddy cheerfully suggested they add someone new to the fun. The camera slowly zoomed in on the knife in the puppet's hand. And then I saw it. On the screen, there was a table. On the table was a hand. My hand. I froze, staring at the screen, then instinctively glanced down at my own hands. They rested on my lap, unharmed, but the air in the room seemed to constrict around me. In the show, the knife hovered above the drawn hand. The puppets stood motionless. Freddy grinned wider than seemed physically possible and said, "Let's see how it works," in real time. Something flickered in the corner of my eye, just at the edge of my vision. I whipped my head around, but there was nothing there. On the screen, the knife began to descend. At that exact moment, I felt a cold, metallic touch against my wrist. I screamed and leapt off the couch. "Emmy, what's wrong?" Jacob cried, startled. I couldn't speak. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. In the corner, I saw them, two shadows swaying gently, like pendulums. They shouldn't have been there. On the screen, Freddy turned to face me directly. His puppet face didn't move, but I felt his grin widen. "Well, friends, let's finish the feast." The figures on the screen started moving faster. Around me, the room filled with sounds, rustling, footsteps, the creaking of floorboards. The air itself seemed to hum with dread. Then, the kitchen door began to swing open again, wider this time, as if someone, or something, was pushing it. I glanced at the screen. Freddy stood beside a sweater sleeve identical to mine. The knife hovered over its edge. That was it. I bolted for the TV, my hands shaking as I fumbled for the power button. I managed to press it just as Freddy's face filled the screen. For a split second, I thought I heard him say, "We'll see you again." The screen went black. The noises stopped. The shadows disappeared. The kitchen door was closed, and there was no sign of a knife near me. "What's wrong with you?" Jacob yelled. "That was the best part." I stared at him, still catching my breath. He looked perfectly fine, completely unaware of what had just happened. "You didn't see the shadows? The knife? The puppets?" I asked. He rolled his eyes. "What? No. It's just a show, Emmy. You're being weird." I looked around the room. Everything seemed normal again, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. I quickly pulled the disc out of the player and stuffed it into my pocket. That night, I threw it away, wrapping it in layers of paper so I wouldn't have to see that image again. But as I drifted off to sleep, I heard it. A low, drawn-out hiss. "Hello, friends.